Okay, guys, welcome back. It's 2024, but very soon 2025. So I am joined by Ollie Little from the Rugby Paper Podcast, and we're just going to have a good old chat about what's coming up, what we're excited about in 2025. Ollie, how are you doing?
All right, tired. Ready for a break, Richard. What about you?
Absolutely, yeah, ready for a break. We were just talking. I've been cut off from water for the past couple of days, and you're knackered. So we thought we'd just have a nice little chin wag about what's coming up, see what we want to talk about. And the main things, of course, is it's a Lions year, which I don't know, for me, it kind of consumes me a bit. Is it the same for you, or can you separate it out and watch the Six Nations just as it is?
No, I can't. The Six Nations is a dress rehearsal,
Right.
essentially. We were talking on the podcast about, people who have put their hand up in the Autumn Nations, and the conclusion was largely it doesn't really matter. Two-thirds of the players that I watched your video picking your squad are on the plane for you,
Do
aren't
you think
necessarily
do
on
you
the
think
plane.
it's that nailed on?
No, sorry, aren't on the plane.
Aren't on the
Opposite.
plane, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I
So you
think
think
it's
it's all
very
to
much
play
on the
for?
plane. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I was kind of thinking. I was looking through, going through the players, thinking, right, who's absolutely nailed on? And obviously got Caelan Doris, the captain, so he's going. That's one. Finn Russell. I mean, we can go through some players in a bit, but actually, there's a fair bit of conversation to be had about some of these names, isn't there? Um,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, there are so many questions, and you think back to, I don't know, 2017. Ben Teo ended up starting the first Lions test
My
that
God, he
year.
did. Yeah.
He was not in the picture whatsoever, and so players that aren't even starting for their countries could end up being Lions start, and that's kind of exciting, right? Which it makes the Six Nations all the more important. Ben Teo, he grabbed a try in that France game. I think that was that year, and it put him on the plane to New Zealand.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing is, it's this 2 month trial, isn't it? It's like a big old trial with the Six Nations, and if your country has a great Six Nations, I mean, that's going to boost you forwards as well. I mean, let's go into the countries for the Six Nations. Who is the favourite? Is it France? Is it Ireland? Is it Scotland?
Yeah, Scotland, I tell you what, the performance of the autumn for me was Scotland against Australia. I think, first of all, I'll answer the question. I think France are favourites. They
That's what I think. Yeah.
rediscovered their mojo in the autumn. I'm sure you feel the same. The Dupont effect kicked back
Oh,
in.
God, yeah.
Um, and I think that they are favourites. But I think next on the list might even be Scotland. What they did against Australia was made to look even more impressive by what happened in Dublin the weekend afterwards, where, let's be honest, Australia should have won that game. It was a couple of refereeing decisions and Taniela Tupou not throwing a hospital pass above his head
Yep.
and just chucking it to his left. That was the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, with Dupont, just going back to him quickly, he's lost a bit. He's slimmed down, hasn't he, because of the sevens? That's what I think. And he's actually a bit better for it almost because he didn't need to be as bulky as he was. And now he's even quicker, I think.
Interesting observation. I haven't noticed anything physically, but if he has, he's still got the power.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No,
I mean, in the
absolutely.
Champions Cup this past couple of weekends, he was still handing off and bumping players, which, we talk about that, and he did that in the sevens as well. You just don't see for other nines in the world. But no, he had a quietish autumn by his standards in terms of he was more sort of the unsung glue.
And
And
he,
then
he
again,
made some great passes. I think his passing range was kind of the thing that was so impressive to me. He's just picking those
exactly.
passes, so confident.
It's the passes, it's the timing. But then I do feel like we see a different Dupont with Toulouse in that he almost is unhinged in a way that's quite compelling, and he really comes to life.
Oh, Toulouse. I wasn't really going to talk about the Champions Cup, but my God, Toulouse are unbelievable, aren't they?
We
Jesus,
were
they got this.
saying on the
Oh,
we were
God.
saying on the podcast, it's such an interesting question, and it was actually my dad that put it to me. How many teams in World Rugby, international, domestic, can say hand on heart they'd beat Toulouse? And I think you'd say the Springboks, and that's it.
Yeah,
Genuinely.
I mean, yeah, the personnel is almost perfect. You've got world class personnel, and they've been playing together forever. They know how they play. They know where everyone's going to be, and it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's so good. I mean, they've got to be red hot favourites for the Champions Cup in my eyes at the moment. 2 rounds in.
Couldn't agree more. And you also think, obviously, the Springboks would probably beat them. Yes, I think they'd have too much. France, you'd probably put next on the list because there's so much overlap. But the Toulouse machine is more reliable than the French machine, certainly, which obviously had it a fairly up and down Six Nations, for example, albeit without the best player in the world. But yeah, they're a scary, scary outfit, and any team will be wanting to avoid them in the
Yeah.
knockouts when we eventually get there.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, let's just finish up on the Six Nations because you're talking about Scotland looking amazing, and some of my viewers have made some really good comments about it's kind of not now or never, but this really is the best Scotland team you might ever have because that backline is almost perfect. It's almost perfect. Finn Russell still as good as ever, and then you've got that kind of not foreigners as such, but kind of foreign source players. You know, you've
Yeah.
got there's a perfect balance. You've got the power of Van der Merwe. You've got Tuipulotu, Hugh Jones. I think is like South African no origin, isn't he? So you've got obviously it's mainly Scottish team, but you've got this perfect balance of players from elsewhere as well. And then you
Mm.
chuck in Finn Russell. It doesn't seem much better. Can it get any better if they don't win in the next couple of years? Is that them done for a while?
Obviously, you never know. Look, you never know who's in the pipeline, right?
Yeah,
Player,
sure.
Tom Jordan has come through the ranks this season, and that may well be the case, going forward. But I think if you go into a Six Nations, we always do a big preview with Jerry Guscott just beforehand. We'll do it this time around, and I think Scotland's chances will never look better. Home fixtures are semi in their favour, and look, like you say, the back line, genuine, and we've said this on the podcast. If you pick that back line to start a British and Irish Lions match,
Yeah.
I don't think there are too many objections you could have. Obviously, players like Gary Ringrose, Bundyaki, Hugo Keenan will have something to say about it, sure. But I think every single one of those players is on in contention for, not just a playing spot, but a match day 23 spot.
Okay, I'll chuck one out to you that I've been thinking of. Could Andy Farrell just go simply Irish forwards, Scottish backs, and a couple of others on the bench? I mean, why not? They all play together. They all know what they're doing. They're all in with a shout as the best player for that position. He's probably not going to, but you could definitely do that.
I love the thinking. I think, oh God, that's such a good
I mean,
question. I wouldn't have too many objections.
who would you
I
drop out? Go on then. Let's jump into it. Who would you drop if you were going Irish forwards? This is changing what I was going to do, but
Yeah,
why not? I'll go through them. You tell me who you drop out potentially for one of these Irish forwards. So Porter,
sure.
Sheehan, Furlong.
Keep, drop.
Okay.
In,
Who
in
would
order.
you pop in for Furlong?
Zander Fagerson.
Okay.
He had a stunning autumn. I think Furlong has dropped off a little bit, and it'll be quite nice because it's the first Lions tour since 2013 that the tight head spot is actually up for grabs. I think really,
Yeah.
Zander Fagerson has got hands, he's got dynamism added to his game. So no, he would be my pick.
Well, now I agree with that he is the better player at the moment. But would Tyke Furlong be in the 23 anyway on the bench? So my point is,
Yeah,
if he would, why not just start the whole unit and then bring on someone? Do you know what I mean? There's an argument for that, even though Ferguson might be the better player to start Furlong anyway. I don't know.
I mean, neither of them are the most explosive carriers. Both of them are fairly reliable, scrummaging wise. Ferguson held his own against the Southern Hemisphere fantastically well this
He
past
did.
autumn. So to be
He did.
honest, it's a Lions series. You start with your better prop for me, and
Yeah.
against a team like the Springboks, where there's such a blueprint, you could probably start to second guess and maybe be right in doing so. Against Australia, I think you start with your best prop, and for me at the
Okay.
moment, under.
Okay. We might. I've started this, so I'm gonna have to finish it now. So McCarthy and James Ryan or Tyke Byrne in the second row. Is there anyone who you drop out of that?
It would just be Maro Itoje, who, in my opinion, is my
Yeah.
second choice for
Give me your
captain.
take on Mara Toji then. What do you think he was looking like in the autumn to you?
Not at the peak of his powers, but more on the pace than he was in sort of late 22, early 23. But he's just a Lions animal. And 2017, he was stunning. And 2021, he was probably our best forward. And I just think he's brought it to the big stage twice already. I think will peak in time for the summer as well. Hopefully his game time will be managed a little bit better than that ridiculous time management last season.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have any objections with an all Irish second row, but My first choice would probably be Marrow after
Yeah.
Joe McCarthy.
Yeah, Honor told you, I think a few years ago, he was having a few health issues that he didn't talk about, but he did say he was having them. And that probably explained why he was really dropped off a couple of years ago. I think he's
Yeah,
probably playing as well as he possibly can play at the moment. I think he's just slowing down with age. I think that's why he doesn't look quite the same. He's bulked up a bit. He's slowing down with age. But for Saracens, I think he's producing the best he can produce.
mm.
Um,
He's probably not the force he was, but like I say, Lions test animal, and I think that's irreplaceable for me.
Absolutely. I go on there. So Van der Fleer, well, who would be in the back row? That's it. So Van der Fleer, would he start for you?
So we spoke. Speaking of peak of your powers, he dropped off last year, and then I thought again he's looking like he is the world player of the year that
He
Irish
looked
fans.
really fresh, didn't he, in the autumn?
For me, he's the seven. Yeah,
He's the seven. So is he, and then Caelan Doris as well. So Caelan Doris have to play. Who plays six for you then for the Lions since we're on this theme here?
someone English. I think there are a lot of contenders.
Okay.
I could bizarrely see Ben Earl doing a job at six. He's played there before for Saracens, and I just think you could fit the three of them into that back row. However, I think Jack Willis. I think Jack Willis gets into any 23
Yeah,
in the
go on then. Let's go back to that then. Do you think that's going to happen? We'll jump around in this chat because we don't care. It's the end of the year. Um, Jack Willis, and then Owen Farrell as well, and Courtney Lawsay. Is Andy Farrell, you think, just considering anybody? Does he want to favour maybe if there's a 50-50, does he favour someone from playing in the Four Nations? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think 50-50 calls, he goes for those who have had, more recent test match experience. Who knows whether nepotism will play a part in terms of picking his kid.
You,
That's
you,
another.
you think he will? So
No,
so Russell
honestly,
goes, right? Russell goes.
Russell goes,
Smith goes.
Smith goes, and for me, Crowley goes, and those are your three.
Or whoever's playing, or whoever has the best Irish Six Nations.
Correct. I think Sam Prendergast isn't quite ready yet. Funnily enough, he's kicked on for Leinster since the Autumn Nations, but I think he showed that his game management isn't quite where Jack Crowley's is. Even if with ball in hand, he's probably that little bit more exciting. But for me, Farrell misses out. He's had obviously injury problems at
Yeah,
Racing, but pretty unspectacular in that side is struggling, albeit
yeah,
without him. I have to
absolutely.
buy it. So can you imagine the knives that will come out if he gets picked and one of the
Yeah,
three doesn't?
I think if he was clearly one of the best, I think Farrell's got enough guts in him just to take him and not care about it. But I think
Yeah.
if it's 50-50 or less than that, he's not going to go, is he?
No.
I'll chuck something out to you about Sam Prendergast here. Watching him
Mm.
for Leinster, the guy takes the ball to the line, picks the passes as well as anybody at the moment. If that's the sort of game that Farrell wants to play, considering that Russell's a ball player, Smith's, I guess, is a bit more of a runner, I guess. But if Russell's your number one, Prendergast might be your second best fit for that pass picker, guy right in the face. What do you reckon of that?
You want a 10 who is just another Finn Russell, and that's probably unfair to both of them, to be honest, because they've got very different games. For me, whereas a position like tight head that doesn't necessarily have as many, sorry to the tight head props out there, doesn't have as many dimensions to it. And it probably doesn't have the same impact on a team of fly-half as your general. And I think, say, the Lions are 12 points down and under the pump, you bring on a Marcus Smith, or having started a Marcus Smith, you bring on a Finn Russell, and they're automatically a point of difference. Marcus
Hmm.
Smith has that express, maybe not express pace, but certainly feet that Finn Russell doesn't have, or vice versa. Finn Russell can pick the perfect pass or come up with the maverick kick to give the Lions a line out on the 5 meter line that a Marcus Smith probably isn't so reliable at doing.
Yeah. And whilst we're on it as well, the last thing I was thinking of, because I think Marcus Smith and Finn Russell are so obviously going to be going, maybe he goes for two kind of more utility players who can play 10, who play in maybe one or two of the games against the domestic teams. Maybe he takes a Frawley and a Kinghorn as two extra tens, and then he just has two. That's another thing I've been thinking about.
I wouldn't be mad at that. And I think that gives, because really you're struggling for spots. Did you pick five centers in your Lions squad? I think I'm right in
Yeah, I think
saying.
so. I think because I thinking back now, you're testing me because I couldn't drop Hugh Jones or Ringrose. I couldn't drop one of them.
Oh,
I had to
rightly
take
so.
both and have one of them cover the wing or fullback or something.
But I think the controversial pick in that, and not to pick your squad apart, mine would have been pretty close to it. But Duhan van der Merwe,
Yeah,
and I think you've got to take four wingers.
yeah,
Even
you're probably
wing,
right.
it's probably the most amenable position in the back line, in that you can chuck a Blair Kinghorn and he can do a job there. I think he scored a hat trick for Scotland on the wing. But anyway, yeah, I would be starting Smith and or Russell, and then switching styles off the bench and have that point of difference.
Okay. Well, jumping back to what the nations will be doing during the Lions, they're obviously going to be touring as well.
Mm.
And I wonder, let's start with Wales because they might only have one or two tourists. Again, we'll jump back again. For Wales, does Lake go?
Yes,
So Lake goes, so he's
power, and
gone.
he's probably the only genuine contender for a starting spot at the moment.
Yeah, I think he could really excel in a Lions team. I think he could like really come alive off the bench maybe or something like that. And then I think that's it actually. I know Morgan say might be close, but there's so many other sevens and I can't see him going actually. Can you?
If he accelerates post injury, then I absolutely think I can see it happening. At the moment, Jack Morgan's on an upward curve back from injury. Ben Earl, I would argue, is on a downward curve.
Yeah.
So for example, they're similar-ish players, dynamism, very leggy in terms of the way that they carry. Both leaders, I could see it being a shootout there, and probably Earl at the moment edges it, but I think Morgan's a contender, no doubt.
Okay, so let's say Lake and Morgan go, but Wales could well go on their summer tour with pretty much their full team. And it
Wild.
and yeah, so they're going to play two tests, it looks like, against Japan. That could be really good for them because I've been kind of having a go at them for a while because they make far too difficult fixture list basically for the quality they've got at the moment. So they've been getting beaten by these high quality teams when they're not really ready for them. So they could go to Japan and almost fully stacked and really get something out of this summer, which is something that I think maybe is going under the radar if they
At the,
take their full strength team.
at the very least, they need to break the losing streak.
Yeah.
So hopefully they've got two good chances to do that, and hopefully at least once they get it done. I mean, look, it's a crazy and fairly desperate situation at this point. I think when it is as dire as that, you need continuity. Whereas I was dismayed by the team Steve Borthwick picked to play Japan after we'd lost, five on the
Yeah.
bounce.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
What
I
was
would
that all
not get
about?
experiment. Don't. I mean, how Tom Curry was playing rugby one is a disgrace.
Yeah.
Um,
He's even knocked out, wasn't he?
Knocked out cold 2 weeks earlier, and some of the worst man management around someone who has had his problems, still has another 5 years of rugby in him if handled properly, not like that. And
Yeah,
then also
that's nuts,
our
isn't it?
midfield combination that's not working. But whereas we don't, I think we need to be experimenting. I think Wales actually need more continuity. So I would be staying at full strength if Warren Gatland has the chance to.
Yeah, I think that could be actually a really good tour for them. England look like they're going to Argentina again, which I seem to remember when they went to Argentina before, we had the emergence of Tom Curry. Who else was there? Underhill, maybe. Some other young players really came through on that tour. So I'm hoping that Borthwick rests some of these guys, like Tom Curry, say, and he does take your Henry Pollocks and a couple of
Yeah.
players like that. I mean, do you think he's going to do that?
What choice does he have? I suppose if Tom Curry doesn't make the Lions tour or Underhill doesn't, and I don't think either will, you have the chance to play them. But I think even Steve Borthwick isn't so wooden to see this as not an opportunity to breed your Henry Pollocks, your Apoku Forjaws, who deserves a start over the summer for sure. I actually think he's a little bolter for the Lions' larger squad.
Wow, blimey, there's a shout. What, loose head or tight head?
Both. how
Yeah,
invaluable is
yeah, great point. Great point.
both sides of the scrum. So anyway, if he's not going, then I think he absolutely deserves a start. I'd love to see an Ibitoye in there, Gabe Ibitoye, and obviously experiment with the many centres who simply haven't had a look. Because
Got to expect he can't take Henry Slade. He's just, I mean, he's got to try and look beyond him, hasn't he? Because there's
yeah,
no one at the moment. There's no one.
no,
Okay, so well, that's what we hope is going to happen for England. If we're not, we're going to cry. Ireland, I mean, they're picking. It looks like they're going to Romania, Georgia. So surely that's going to be developmental.
mm-hmm.
You'd think,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And of course, they haven't got their head coach as well. So, and then Scotland got some interesting ones though. So they're going to be shorn of a lot of their team, pretty much their whole backline probably, and they're going to take on the Maori All Blacks and then some Pacific Islands, Fiji, Samoa, something like that. That could be a crazy, crazy few games, couldn't it?
I mean, I tell you what, how good to watch will that all be? Because Scotland, ball in hand, I know they won't have their stars. Will are the most exciting home nation. I think Ireland's attack is arguably more structured. Maybe not arguably, it just is more structured. But Scotland, ball in hand, some of the tries they scored against Australia were fantastic. And obviously against the Islanders, there's no saying what could happen. I just hope it's on somewhere accessible to view because that's becoming
Yeah.
increasingly difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm struggling to find some of these games. I tell you what.
Yeah,
Premier Sports. Who has Premier Sports? I
not me yet. I think it's
no.
80 quid a year, which I have not been able to justify just
Yeah.
yet.
There's ways of watching these things, but not that I condone them. Anyway, okay. So I reckon that's a little bit of a dark horse, those summer tours. I do like them because you get to see some exciting players with less pressure on, etc. Let's
Yeah.
finish on our pet favourite topic, England. So apologies to people out there who aren't England fans, but we've got to talk about it because there's plenty going on. There's some, we might see some not dual contracts, what are they called? Hybrid contracts. Some more of
Yeah.
those dished out next year. Just off the bat, have you got any preference? Is there anybody you think has to have one? Talk about maybe giving Henry Arundel one to tempt him back.
I mean, he's not been tearing down trees in France, so I
No.
wouldn't be tearing down trees myself to get him back at this point. I simply think, and this is probably putting it a bit too plainly, Emmanuel Faye-Warboso is a better version of Henry Arundel. He
Oh,
looks for more work,
oh,
more explosive, better feet.
looks for more work is an understatement.
Yeah, looks for much more work.
Jesus, he is
Henry Arundel's first
everywhere.
couple of starts, he was invisible. That game against Ireland sticks to mind, and Faye Warboso, obviously, that start against Ireland that we won. So I would be less tempted by that. I'd almost like to see a few players, a la Tom Curry, particularly Henry Slade, almost taken off it. Just to make a point, if anything, and then if you want to bring in the new blood, the old blood has to make way. But I think that's the first step for me.
Okay, so who would you go for in the centre then? If we're going to change up the centre, let's say we're moving beyond Henry Slade.
Yeah.
For me, I'm struggling. I I've got a video coming out at the weekend. I won't give it away. I'll see what you'll say. Who
Okay.
would you go for in if you were to go beyond Henry Slade? Let's say he's injured, he's not picked or whatever. What would you go for?
I couldn't agree more with Jerry Guscott, who called at the start of the autumn for Tommy Freeman. How Tommy Freeman was not given a go at 13 in that game against Japan. I was livid is probably overstating it. There are bigger things to be livid about, but I was really really upset that that didn't happen. Tommy Freeman is not the arch try scorer that we need out on the wing. I think he's got 2 tries in 14, 15 caps. Obviously, he's a very different kind of winger, aerial strength, etc. But he's powerful. He's got feet. He's got ball handling ability. Get him in the game more. And I think an Ollie Lawrence, Tommy Freeman combination could be legitimately exciting.
Yeah. So would you stick with Lawrence as a 13 at 12?
I
Because
think
he's a
so.
13, isn't he? He is a 13.
We've always campaigned on the podcast for him at 13. And that would be betraying it. And I am betraying what we've campaigned for. But he didn't, again, tear down trees at 13 over the autumn. And I know that would be closing a book before it's even opened, really. But I think Freeman at 12 would be a stretch. I just want to see that
Yeah.
combination. I suppose the autumn showed it doesn't really matter what shirt you have on your back.
Yeah. I
You know,
watched Lawrence live. I went to a Bath game with friends and family and watched him live, and he's very explosive. But he did the two things that I think just take him below that top level. One on the drift, he got burnt out wide by Josh Hodge, who's
Yeah.
crazy quick. I tell you what, just went right round the outside of him. He wasn't
Yeah.
quick enough, and then he made an amazing break and lost the ball in contact.
Yeah.
The two things I think that are really holding him back. But Freeman has to play. He's got to play 13 for Northampton regularly, I think, to really give him a good chance.
Does he? Ben Earl plays 7 for Saracens, and he's donning 8 for England. I think Henry Slade wore
Yeah.
12 first time in the autumn, having never worn it for Exeter. I mean,
Okay.
in my opinion, I agree with you, but I think seeing it how Steve Borthwick sees it, I think not, to be honest.
Okay. What about the fullback debate then? A couple more chats about England then. Furbank I was so surprised. I thought he was going to show a bit more in the autumn. He
Yeah.
seemed quiet. Do you think that was just unlucky? Did you see anything there? And then the Freddie Stewart debate, where do you sit on that?
I think there's a disconnect between Marcus Smith at 10 and George Furbank at 15. I think Finn Smith, and he showed it when he came off the bench against Japan, I thought he was superb. Similar to a Finn Russell or a Sam Prendergast is a pass picker.
Yeah.
And that's a much
Yeah.
easier time for a creative fullback like Furbank to play off than a Marcus Smith, who is a maverick, and you've no idea what he's going to do. And you look at a couple of the tries he created in the autumn. The one against South Africa springs to mind. Lines up for a drop goal, then runs left.
Yeah.
And how do you play off that as a fullback unless you play your club rugby with that person? So it's a difficult one, but Freddie Stewart got made to look a bit silly a couple of times in defence. And I don't think that experiment, I say it's not even an experiment. I just don't see it as viable. That issue will always be there. His strength
Always
can
going
always
to be there
by not taking to the skies. So if you want to give Furbank a continued run and get him used to playing with Marcus Smith, great. If not, Josh Hodge is waiting in the wings. Joe Carpenter's waiting in the wings, and he's been consistent for Sale. I think there are other options.
Yeah. Okay. I'll leave you on one final thought on the backs, then we'll have a quick chat about the forwards and then knock it on the head. With this new law, well, not new law, the new interpretation where literally no one's allowed to get in the way of the chaser. I mean, literally no one. You sneeze at a chaser and it's a penalty. You could well make a case for saying Stewart at fullback, Roebuck on one wing, Freeman on the other wing, and just kick. It's professional sport. It could happen.
I mean, if the results continue as to be as dry as they've been, then I suppose. But it does betray everything England said in the Six Nations about getting the Twickenham fans on their seats again. And
Yeah, but I mean, Eddie Jones said that when he wheeled out some of the most boring sides in English history. So they all say that.
potentially true. And look, that win against Ireland is looking like a red herring at the moment because we then went on to lose, what was it, 5 of our next 6 or 6 of our next 7. But look, I hope that doesn't happen because I would much rather we lose trying to get this New England right than revert to old styles and double down on it.
Okay, last one then. Last one for you. Let's go back row. Let's go for this debate that I've got in my head that I'm going to talk about on my England video on Saturday. Tom Willis. Does he
Yes.
come into the back row? Who else? This battle for the back row. Where do you see it? What's your starting back row and your bench man?
I mean, the bench was fatal in the autumn, right?
Yeah,
Alex Dombrandt and Nick Ezekwe coming off the bench were both fairly inconsequential.
it's not impactful enough, is it?
Tom Willis's impact. He's got more meters made, more defenders beaten than anyone in the Premiership this season.
And he's huge. He's got absolutely massive now. He's like,
Yeah.
Lawrence Delalio in his pomp massive now, isn't he?
He echoes a lot of Lawrence actually. You put him on the bench to begin with, you see how he goes, and you give Ben Earl some competition. If Earl needs to move to 7, I think Tom Curry needs a break. Needs a year off rugby almost. He's now having his hip, readjusted, but quite goes
It's not
right.
great. It's not great.
Flags.
Yeah,
I
I've got
mean,
a lot of sympathy for him. I've had hip operations as well. I kind of know a lot about this sort of thing. And essentially, his hip is screwed, to say a nice word.
yeah,
And you can manage it for a few years, and then you have a hip replacement, basically. And there's so many other other sevens out there, I don't know if it's even fair to pick him internationally. Let him have a great club career for another 2, 3 years, whatever, and then you call it a day.
It's sad because he was a world beater in
Oh yeah,
2019,
big
and that
time.
we speak about bulking up. We always say on the podcast, as soon as he mucked about moving to six, well, he was in 2019, I suppose, but particularly eight, put on all this size, he slowed down, became less effective as a player, and had all these hip problems. I don't think that's a coincidence.
No,
So anyway, I think we need to start counting him out.
I think
See
so.
better seven, which he is. Obviously, bring in Sam Underhill, give Henry Pollock a game off the bench, give Tom Pearson a game off the bench, and obviously lose the Ezekwe. Not even experiment at this point, persistence, let's call it.
Are there any second rows out there that have taken your fancy apart from the ones that are normally there?
Alex Coles continues to improve. I think he internationally he showed that he was a little bit raw,
Yeah.
lacking discipline, maybe a little bit too rabbit in headlights. But I think he's worth another go. Other than that, I can't wait for Ollie Chesham to be fit again
Yeah.
because
He
George
needs.
Martin was slightly underwhelming in the autumn. And again, I think that little extra injection, and Ollie Chesham's an enforcer, but he's more dynamic than George Martin is.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I think you're right. Um,
Waiting for him again.
yeah. So how many English are going to go on the Lions tour? Last one, then we'll close out.
What in the squad of 35 to
Yeah.
40?
Quite. I think quite a few will actually. I think more than people are expecting might go. I see Faye Busu. I think he is going. If he keeps playing how
Yeah,
he is, he goes because he's so different from everyone else. Smith, we've said. Maybe Alex Mitchell.
yeah, I
You just tell
agree.
you just tell me if I'm wrong then. Anyone else
No,
in the
no,
back line?
um,
I can't really think anyone else backs wise.
no, I'm probably landing at around 10.
Okay.
With more of an emphasis on the forwards. I could see all of, well, not all going at once, but I think Cunningham South, Willis, and Laws for that six shot are all contenders, and we'll
Mm,
see how Cunningham South goes in the second or the first half of the year. Um, but a forward heavy 10 or so, I would say, is a good ballpark.
okay. Yeah, I think maybe about 8 or something like that. It depends how they go in the Six Nations, of course. Anyway, right, I'll tell you, I'll let you go there. I've kept you long enough. Thank you so much, Ollie. What's coming up on the rugby podcast and what we got to look forward to in 2025?
We've got a couple of weeks off. It's been a crazy end to the year of the podcast. We've had, I don't know, David Campese, Namani Nadolo, who were great. We've had Luke Pearce on, that was fantastic. Jack Kenningham just last week, who was wonderful as well. We've got during the Six Nations, Jerry Guscott. We're looking at potentially a live episode
Okay.
at a Stonegate pub in Clapham, which it's in the works at the moment, but hopefully you'll be hearing more about that soon. Matt Fagerson is coming on during the Six Nations.
Oh,
Richard Hibbert
great.
coming on during the Six Nations. Lewis Liner is coming on during the Six Nations. Jason Leonard. So look, we've already got several
Wow.
guests in the pipeline, and I also like the fact that this time next year there'll be 40 plus different guests that have come on that I don't even know about yet. But hopefully the names I've mentioned gives you an idea of the kind of people that are coming on the pod. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Yeah, check out the Rugby Paper podcast if you like interviews with excellent top internationals like that. Okay, well, have a fantastic Christmas break and I'll see you in the next year.
Yeah, have a great Christmas, Richard.